Hello, everybody. If your business is online, then you know some percentage of your customers are interacting with your product on multiple devices. One customer may be interacting with your product on both an iPhone or an iPad, or maybe they interacted with your product originally on an old phone after purchasing a new phone. Either way, it's super important for your business to know what percentage of your DAU or digital audience is interacting with your product on multiple devices. It's important because if the percentage is high, you need to change your code base to make sure it can accommodate devices of different screen sizes, and then inform the quality assurance team that these different screen sizes need to be tested to accommodate the same customer on multiple devices. So behind me, you see a very generalized DAU chart for the last 90 days with the percentage of that DAU that's accessing your product on more than one device. And in this demo business, it's about 40%. So 40% of customers are accessing this online business's product on more than one device. So let's head over to MySQL and I will show you how to do this for your own business. Okay, so in order to do this analysis, in general, you need two SQL tables. You need an installs table, which has the installs customer ID and their device ID. And then you just need a second SQL table, which is just logins by customer ID. If you have those two data sources, or if you have that type of data, then we can do this analysis. So let me show you those data sources now. We'll start with the logins table. It's just login days per customer ID. So here's this one customer and all of their login dates. And then what's crucially needed is an installs table, which has both the customer ID and the device ID. That's super important. Both of those identifiers have to come in on the install. So here's our installs table, fact player installs. And as you can see here, we have both the customer ID and the device ID value coming in on each of our installs. Perfect. So we have all the data we need. So to get started with this query, let's just start simple. If you remember in the chart that I showed you earlier in this tutorial, we're just looking at DAU over the last 90 days. So let's go ahead and take this logins table and we can just call it logins. And to get the last 90 days of data, let's just say where logins.login date is greater than or equal to the current date, which is today's date of January 26, 2025, but we're going to subtract 90 days from today's date. So we'll do date, and we'll do an interval minus 90 days. So what this is saying is, let's bring in all the data for the last 90 days, where the login date has to be greater than or equal to 90 days ago. So current date minus 90 days. Okay, so that's good. Let's run a few records. Okay, great. So now that we're looking at our data, all we really need are just two fields from this table. Just the customer ID and then the login date. Great. So we can take a pause from this query and actually build a second query that we're going to join to. So what we're trying to do is for each one of these customers And for each one of these dates, we want to bring in all the installs that this customer made on or prior to this date and bring across their device IDs as well. So again, what we're trying to do is for each one of these customers and their login dates, we want to bring each of these customers' installs that are less than or equal to this login date and bring across the device IDs as well, so that we can answer the question of, hey, by this point in time, October 28, 2024, has this customer installed more than once and with different device IDs? Cool. So in order to do that, we need to build a second query, and that's going to include our installs data. So here's our installs table again, and all we want to do is just take a distinct on the customer ID, the device ID, and the install date. And we're doing a distinct because we have this install date time, and it could be that a customer installed multiple times on the same day and on the same device ID value. So let's go ahead and run a distinct on that so we can collapse those pseudo duplicate records where the only difference is the install date time. So we'll do distinct customer ID, device ID, and install date. There we go. Fantastic. Okay, great. So we have our main query ready, and we have our second query ready that we're going to join to. Let's put our second query in a subselect and just call it installs. So we are taking our main query and we're joining it over to the subselect, this installs table. And we're going to do it on the customer ID equals the installs.customer ID. And guess what? The installs.install date has to be less than or equal to this login date value, right? Because for each customer in each login date, we want to look at the installs that happen on that login date or earlier so that we can see if by that point in time, aka that login date, that customer has installed more than once on more than one device. So we're going to bring across the installs.install date and installs.device ID. And let's get a visual on what's going on. We'll do an order by. These fields right here. Okay, let's check what we did one more time. We're joining on customer ID between logins and installs. And then the install date has to be less than or equal to the login date. And we're bringing across the install date and the installs device ID. Great, let's look at a couple thousand records. So here's our progress so far. Let's run this. Okay, great. So we can look at the first two rows where we are looking at customer ID ending in 89252. And we're looking at one specific login date, which is December 27, 2024. And what we can see is that this customer has actually, by this date and time, December 27th, 2024, they've installed twice. They've had two install dates. One actually on this login date, December 27, 2024, and the first time much earlier, April 27th, 2023. And what you can see is that they installed twice, and each time they installed, it was on a different device, because you can see that the device ID value is different in each one of these installs. Okay, great. And you're probably wondering, well, isn't there something wrong since this record got duplicated? It started out as one record, December 27, 2024, from the login table, but now it's been expanded to two records. And I just want to say that this was intentional, and that a lot of times people think duplication is erroneous. In a lot of cases it is, but sometimes it's deliberate and intentional. And in this example, it's intentional because what we're trying to do is, per login date, bring in all the install dates that happen on this login date or prior to this login date and bring across the device IDs. So that potentially, depending on how many records from table 2 qualify for that, will expand the original record to X number of records. And that's totally fine because we're actually going to recollapse it in a future aggregate function. Okay, it looks like we have everything we need. So let's go ahead and wrap this in a larger subselect. Let's call this players. Players.customer ID. We'll do players.login date. And then we're going to do players.device ID. And we're going to do a count distinct here. And what this is going to do is it's going to show you how many devices each customer has by each of these login date values. So this player by this login date value actually has two devices or just one device. Let's call this devices, and let's group by this. And remember to remove any order bys in nested subselects. It's just going to hurt the query performance. Let's run a few records. Okay, great. So as you can see here in the first row, this customer ending in 9252 by December 27, 2024 have two devices, meaning they've been interacting with your online business with two devices, maybe an iPhone and an iPad, or maybe they recently bought a new phone. Okay, great. So we basically have all the data we need. Now all we need to do is run a final aggregation. And we can just call this ag. So we want to bring in the login date, and this is for the last 90 days. We just want DAU for the last 90 days and the percentage of that DAU that is interacting with your business on multiple devices. So ag.customer ID. We'll do a count distinct here to get DAU. And then we're going to do a case statement here and say case when devices, this right here, is greater than 1, then do a count distinct on these customers, else null end. DAU. We're going to call this DAU with, or DAU multiple devices. We're going to finish it up with a group by, and then we'll be ready to run this final query. Here we are, let's go ahead and run it. Okay, so here is our final data set. Let's go ahead and move this over to Excel. Okay, here we are in Excel, and we have DAU for the last 90 days, along with the DAU that has multiple devices. So all we need to do is create just one additional column and just do the percentage of DAU with more than one device. So just divide DAU multiple devices divided by DAU. And there we go, about 30% of our digital audience is interacting with your products or product with more than one device. Call this DAU, call this date. And let's go ahead and build that chart. Let's do a combo. Okay, everybody. So today in this tutorial, we pulled DAU over the last 90 days. But what's important is we're also calculating the percentage of that DAU that's interacting with your online business on more than one device. And this has a lot of important implications for your business. And it can start from user acquisition, right? So if 40% of your customers are logging in on more than one device, that means that you likely acquired that customer more than once on 2 different devices. And that does impact your user acquisition budget. In addition, there are further implications. If you have customers that are interacting with your business on more than one device, then those devices could be of different platforms and different screen sizes. And it's important that your product is flexible enough to accommodate all of this. Well, anyway, now you've mastered the technical requirements to rebuild this analysis for your own business, and I hope this information has been helpful to you and sticks with you as you continue on your learning journey. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you very much.